levies, liens, wage garnishments, even file back tax returns. And the best news about legal tax defense is they won't take your case unless they know they will reduce or eliminate your tax debt. Call Legal Tax Defense right now for a free no-risk consultation. 800-292-7875. 800-292-7875. You have nothing to lose but everything to gain. 800-292-7875.
Program is a paid advertisement and does not necessarily represent the views, opinions, or endorsements of Signal Hill Media Partners, its affiliate stations, or its advertisers. Welcome to Taking Care of NC, the program dedicated to exploring the issues, opportunities, and challenges shaping the great state of North Carolina. Join your host, Representative Jeff McNeely, as he delves into meaningful discussions about politics, community initiatives, and the people working to make a difference. Whether it's tackling local concerns, highlighting state achievements, or addressing pressing legislative matters, this show is your go-to source for understanding how North Carolina is growing and thriving. Stay tuned as we kick off another insightful episode of Taking Care of NC.
Good morning, North Carolina. Hope everybody's doing well. Sorry I wasn't here last week. I heard Scottie kept it excited, or as we like to call him, the monkey man. So I'm glad he was able to come on. Sort of timely right about that, wasn't it, Ron? You know, here he's making national news and everything else, and then I get him on the show. I don't know why. That's his trademark. That was going to be the best part of the show, was how the monkey was going. So anyway, as good a friend of mine out there, Jamie Pope, would say, "Where's the monkey, Crockett?" Some of us will know what that means. Rest of y'all have no clue. It's an old joke. But anyway, it comes in handy with this. So, hey, today I've got two candidates, one running at large and the other in Ward 3?
Yes.
3, I thought it was. Ward 3 for Statesville City Council. I know our people, when we stretch from one end of this to the other, kind of got a pretty good audience. But I am here in Iredell, and we are located in Statesville as far as this studio goes. And so, folks, if anybody else out there in another municipality, running somewhere in our viewer or listening, I guess probably more than viewing, but you can find us on Facebook and some other stuff. Let me know. We'll try to work you in this election cycle. If you'd like to talk, we'll try to keep it out there. Need to offer it to everybody. I did offer it here, and some people stepped up. And so, like I said, so I got Corina, Iyoob. I hope I got that right. We just said it, so I wrote it out like I thought I could say it. And Braden Zittle's with us today. And so got good candidates here with us today, and we're going to talk to them. We're going to take calls maybe after the second part of the show. Doesn't have to be. If you want to ask them a question, that's fine, or you can just ask whatever or say whatever like we always do. But first part, we're just going to talk with them. And each one of them's kind of got three things they would like to see done. And then the fourth thing we're going to throw out there, the surprise question. You'll hear it when it's asked, but they already know the question. I gave them time to kind of mull it over. But we're going to start with Corina first. Corina, now, looks like one of the things you would like to do, you're telling me, is modernizing city services. So expand on that. What does that mean?
Yeah, so having worked in local government, I will say that when they talk about the wheels of government moving slowly, sometimes that has to do with stuff being on paper and pencil. There's not a whole lot of opportunity to be able to meet outside of office hours. They might not have online forms. They might not be using any sort of software to help process, whatever service they're doing. And so that's something that I would like to address. I think that's something that is important for a couple reasons. First of all, that when you are using digital platforms, there is a little more level of transparency just because of how it's encoding data. It's building databases of information. And that way, on the leadership side of things, they can analyze how they're performing for the public. On the second end of it, it actually increases the amount of accessibility for the public. And I think that's something that resonates with people when it comes to their government, is making sure that there's access, making sure that there is transparency and making sure that their tax dollars are being spent more efficiently.
All right.
And the kind of another aspect of it is, with the amount of development that's happening, that staff themselves can get bogged down by a lot of these processes and have a very difficult time keeping up with the workload. And so when you build out softwares and workflows and automations that take 50 to 60% of that process out, they're able to be more effective in streamlining their processes. And one of the things that I personally have found is, not everybody wants that modernization. They still want to have that face-to-face. They still want that human element. And when you have a service that offers, the online option with, built out automations that help keep everything streamlined and efficient, you also have the time to take people by the hand and show them this is how things are done. Especially because a lot of these processes that are required by local government, their ordinances or, state regulations, they can get really confusing. And you might have to, hit up more than one department. And in the past, there used to be a lot of siloing of information, and the state would put that on usually the applicant to make sure that they're the ones who are going from agency to agency to department to make sure they're getting all of their approvals in place. That can be really confusing if they miss one. And so, trying to find a way to modernize everything is just going to make it easier on the public to be able to do work within the county. And then on, the back end of that, because we're collecting that information, because they're collecting that data's worth a lot of money. And that's going to be key for the city to be able to make very good decisions about what they want to do for the city going forward. That's something that, remember, the private sector years ago started looking at data analytics and, just looking at how the world is transformed, in front of us into something that, this is what we're driven by. And local government needs to start catching up if we're going to keep up with modernization and development that's happening around us.
Well, when I was a county commissioner, I pushed hard and they started the ombudsman process. Is it still in place? Because the young man that ran that when I left is now doing downtown development or whatever. But do y'all still have the ombudsman at the county level? In other words, somebody kind of be that liaison to help the people through the process and hold hands, especially on the commercial side?
So he was with the Iredell Economic Development Group.
Yeah.
I believe there is somebody who has taken that over. I have not met that person though.
I would love to see the county and the city's steps be very similar.
Mm-hmm.
So when you do one, it does the other.
I agree.
Instead of juggling both.
Yeah.
That's what you get into a lot of time. So that I get where you're coming from. I've been there and done that. Just completed a small building project. It seemed like I was doing the Empire State Building. But anyway, so I can see where it would be nice, and make sure that it's very user friendly.
Exactly.
The counties is not bad. I struggled some on it.
Mm-hmm.
It took me a little while to work through it, but once you get it, and that's the big thing. Everybody says, I talk to all the general contractors. Oh, it's easy. Well, yeah, if you do it every day.
Yes, exactly.
When you're a feed miller and you're trying to be a part-time politician and you ain't got a lot of time and you're like, So anyway, but yeah, okay. Well, Braden, what's one thing that you'd like to see amongst them?
Well, I want to start by thanking you for the opportunity to come on the show, despite the clear attempt to sabotage me. Right, I sandwiched in between two people I can't outperform, you with your dress and Corina with how well spoken she is. But I'll do my best either way. So, biggest thing I think our highest priority at the city level is we have to restore faith in our local government. We have a lot of transparency issues right now, and it doesn't matter how much we change for the positive or kind of stave off some of these issues that are approaching us rapidly. If the city doesn't have clear understanding of why we do what we are doing, and kind of sees that in the wrong way. So I'll use as an example this vote that just came out on the data center. I watched that city council meeting. A lot of citizens showed up with concerns, and we didn't do a great job as a council of explaining the reasoning behind it. Kind of just the public view of that was that that decision had already been made behind closed doors, and there wasn't much to be done. So along those lines, what I want to do kind of right away is push for mandatory quarterly town halls for all of our council members. So each ward will have their own one, probably in their own ward, at a set time, once per quarter, where the people can come out from that ward, speak to them at large, and mayor will have citywide. That I think it's important as the voice of the people that we're voted to represent, that we be accessible and that we be open to sharing our opinions, why we're doing what we're doing, and how we're doing it. So I think transparency is the biggest piece that we have to solve first of all, in order to have that city backing us in all the other hard decisions we have to make.
I know on the county level, once a month, usually in the second meeting for the county commissioners, they allow the time to come and speak about whatever. And I don't know if that city council has that option or not, but it may be something you may want to look at. Maybe that would be easier than doing a town hall.
Absolutely.
But either way, I get it. It'll give the chance to sit. The big thing that I heard from so many people were the ones that were in the ETJ.
Mm-hmm.
Getting annexed in that didn't have a vote. And then you look at the planning board, which is not a voted position, it's an appointed position, but it still puts somebody there. That ETJ slot on the Statesville City Council Planning Board has been empty now, I think, for close to 2 years.
Right.
And I can't believe and I've actually talked to a couple people trying to get this thing going, because there needs to be somebody on that board speaking for the people who won't have a chance to vote for y'all, but they may someday get a chance to vote for you as the city's limits grow out.
Right. And they need to be listened to, right? We've got a lot. Our council and our county seem to be at odds. City council seems to just make decisions that the county, people living in the county, are not fond of. We're kind of doing some annexation that doesn't seem to make the most sense to people who are not in the city necessarily. And so we've got to do a lot better job as part of that transparency, also interacting with the county in order to make sure, again, we're not enemies. We have to align in focus and direction, or else we're both going to play this game of, put down for each other. And it's going to be disastrous for both sides.
Well, that was, a developer comes along, and I've actually got a bill out, and I talk about a lot here, folks. House Bill 348. If you've got land in PUV, which means it's been put into farm, it may not be owned by a farmer, but somebody is farming it, and all of a sudden it comes up for annexation. So that land is set there in the county's eyes, not costing really anything, not getting a lot of tax dollars, but not building schools, not having to do these things, not having to provide services for this 200-acre field. All of a sudden somebody says, hey, I need to get drawn into the city, and I'm going to put 4 houses per lot on it. And next thing you know, the county has to build a school.
Right.
So all of a sudden, and maybe there's 200 acres a half a mile away, or let's say more than that, 2 miles away, and in a different school zone that's only 75%, but they found a piece of land where it's 104% population of the school, and now there's no doubt we're just going to flood it.
And there's no communication with that, right? Like, that's a simple conversation of saying, hey, listen, if we're looking at this, what's the impact to the county? What's the impact to the school system, right? And then as a council, we have to consider that too, right? These are going to be city, living, dwelling students going to schools that we're setting up for failure because we're not properly planning with the county that's running the school board. So there's just a lot of that. I like to call it solving the problems that your initial solution creates at the initial time. We're kind of not doing that. We're just, as a group right now, it seems like we're just, okay, well, this is the problem at hand. What's the best solution that we can come up with in the moment for this? And then we'll cross whatever other bridges down the road. But the reality of it is, if I can only cross 1 bridge down the road instead of 7, then that solution might be better in the moment, even if it's not clear and away the best immediate solution. So there just has to be a little bit more forethought, I think. In
Well,
some of that too.
like I said, it would be nice. I always thought that about once a quarter, the county commissioners and the city council
Mhm.
and the county commissioners ought to do it with Troutman, and they ought to do it with Mooresville, and they ought to do it with Statesville and Harmony, Love Valley even. You never know when it's going to take off. But, maybe do Harmony and Love Valley together.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
anyway, but about once, have a meeting. Have a
Right.
meeting and say, all right, what are y'all hearing?
Mhm.
What are we going to have to be looking for?
Right.
How are we
Absolutely.
going to work this? And so, and 348 would actually give the county commissioners a chance to vote for or down a development that's in PUV outside of the ETJ, because that's the ones you don't see coming.
Yeah.
That's, it may bump right to the ETJ.
Yep.
And so, but you don't see it coming. It's
Right.
out of nowhere.
Yeah, I would say totally off topic, but it's on topic, but out of question. I think as a council, if we're looking at developments and annexation, we should be forced to put something out of this is, county recommended, or, the county would prefer we didn't do this before we make our vote. At least that way the public knows which way the council is going on it. We won't always see eye to eye with the county. That's never going to happen, right?
No.
But at the end of the day, I think we owe it to the people that we represent and the people who we don't represent but are still affected by the decisions that we make to at least be clear and transparent about it.
All right, Corina, your next thing that you wanted to look at was support local entrepreneurs. And I always feel like, some people say I'm full of manure, but I really think I'm an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
So,
absolutely.
a local small business owner. So I'm willing to hear what you got for me. What are we going to do for the support local entrepreneurs?
So I want to play to the strengths of North Carolina, which is number one for business. And I think that some of the things that we're experiencing in terms of, having issues with affordable housing, not being able to bring in high paying jobs. Well, okay, this is how we start addressing it. Why wait for businesses to come in? Let's get people to start their own businesses, keep dollars here in the city. And kind of the way that I would like to address that is by starting a program that offers micro loans and micro grants to individuals that are operating businesses here in the city. Kind of one of the ideas that I had was, if we're collecting the data that I push so hard for, we can really start to identify key areas where we need certain types of businesses. So think less hemp stores and more daycares, these type of areas right here. So we can tailor our program to say, well, if you're going to offer or you're going to start this type of business, then these are the types of resources that we're going to give. We'll partner with the Chamber of Commerce, the Mitchell Small Business Community, any nonprofits that also want to get involved in entrepreneurship development, and get these businesses running. And the thing is, I don't want to necessarily target only new businesses. I think existing businesses can use some love too, just because of the fact that they are a lower level of risk. The longer the business has been in operation, the higher chance of their continued success. One of the things that I've also kind of noticed is the aging population that have been running businesses for 20, 30 years need an out for that business. And so, addressing that transfer of wealth by bringing in a younger generation of entrepreneurs to buy those businesses, keep them local, and keep them from being snatched up by, the market share that wants to just liquidate them, or, individuals who, end up having to pay money in order to discontinue their business. So I just want to keep the money here in Statesville. Another thing is, business is a really good way of building wealth for many people. And, instead of making, going after affordable housing as, okay, we're going to try and bring in lower cost houses, probably not going to happen because the valuation of construction keeps going up and up and up and up and up. Well, this is how we target it. Build wealth through business ownership instead, and, give that opportunity for ownership of business and homes through that avenue instead. And, bring in more of the local economy that we want. I mean, it creates community. It creates connection and keeps dollars out of Amazon and Walmart. I'm okay with that.
Well, and one thing when you say that, the first thing that I think of is there's some beautiful older buildings around,
Mhm.
but once the owner sells, all of a sudden they don't pass code for the next one, and so you encumber this
Mhm.
huge cost right off the get go. Okay, well they were grandfathered in. Now that it finally changed hands, we're going to fix this problem. Well, okay, so now you're talking about somebody, they're going to buy a business for $1 million.
Right.
All of a sudden, the place they're buying, oh, well, we got $500,000 more worth of upgrade. You're going to have to do this to meet our code now instead of what the code was in 1952. So that's where I see the city could make an investment, in my opinion, is helping them over time work through the upstep of the code
Mhm.
instead of having to do it all at once before you ever even really get your doors open.
Yeah.
That what you end up doing is finding somebody that says, "Oh, well, I can't stay in that building.
Yeah.
I'll buy the business and I'll move it down the road here, and we'll build a metal building with a brick facade, which is totally fine." But now we got an empty building that the land's worth more than the building is because of code issues, and we're going to tear it down. And that hurts my heart because I love to walk in these older buildings and see the floor and the woodwork
Yeah.
that somebody meticulously did for 53 cents an hour, back in the day. That would cost you, you couldn't hire that guy now. They're not skilled in that way. So those are things that I see where maybe a grant would be great or a loan would be great, because the city and the county is kind of making that problem. They ought to kind of help you get through that problem,
Right.
some way or another.
And that's where I say, also partnering with the entrepreneurial entities that exist here, in Statesville, because there are going to be scenarios where you are going to have to go and get certifications and you're going to have to get permits. And because, this is something, this can be a lot for someone to navigate, even if they have the hunger and the drive to make it successful. Having that partnership with somebody who holds your hand and really helps you develop a cohesive vision for how to accomplish what you want. Now North Carolina does have an existing buildings code, and that was created specifically for situations where you're moving into something that was built 10, 20 years ago. Well, okay, what do you have to make up to code, and what can you
It's always
have
fire suppression.
grandfathered?
It's always fire suppression.
Level of risk. That's what it
Always.
comes down to.
It's always fire. Yeah.
But having that kind of partnership with the people who want to grow and develop, and their companies and their businesses here, I think that's key. And like I said, just playing to the strengths of North Carolina. This is what we're good at supporting, and we need to prioritize it.
All right, Braden, what is one of your second priorities? We're going, like, each one's got three, folks.
You're
so
good.
everybody's
Yeah,
going to get a chance.
I do want to.
We'll go as long as we want to go. We may
I'm
take
just-
a little break and come back.
I'm just jumping in real quick on that too. Like, I think even the city, you think of the state, the statement that Rome wasn't built in a day, but we expect anybody taking over a new building to do that. Something that's been grandfathered in under old code. So at a certain point, we have to look through the process and say, okay, what's more effective? Saying that you have to have all of this up to code now because you bought the business before we'll let you open your doors, or saying, hey, we're going to put in, a 5-year program or whatever it is, where we're going to expect these milestones to be hit. And that way you can be bringing revenue in and afford it. And then as a city, we can get to code appropriately rather than just demolishing all these old buildings and starting new with, again, all of these metal with brick facades, because that's what's most affordable right now. So I think that you just have to have a pragmatic approach to a lot of this, because so often, especially through the governmental system, we look at this hard black and white of like, okay, well, this is what it is. This is what it says. And so we have to do this, or we have to, or we walk away from it. So we need somebody to get into this position, or in my case, I think that there's a second candidate that we're pushing for as well at large, in Trey Robertson, with his, civil engineering background. Is going to be a huge asset, specifically as it relates to some of these things, where we can try and adjust some of those codes in order to help Statesville maintain its history, but also take that history with them instead of replace it. So
And Rocky Mountain did a lot of stuff. We found this out, as far as changing their code to allow a lot of their old buildings to stay.
Mhm.
It's still fire suppression, but different ways
Right.
that weren't so expensive as the hard piping and the everything you got to do. And a lot of people's going to cry, oh, well, that ain't safe. Well, it's the owner making that decision. It's a trade-off, like you say. And I'm sure maybe there's fire insurance that comes into play, but it's the code giving them a choice.
Right.
When you don't have any choices, that's when things get really hard.
Yeah.
So you got to weigh it. So yeah.
Hadn't been safe for 50 years, but now they want to sell the building. They're like, okay, well, now it's not safe. We can't wait another 3 years to stage through this to get it safe.
Yeah.
Let's just tear it down. Rocky Mount's I actually run one of the FedEx ground contractors that delivers everything to Rocky Mount. So a lot of those buildings out there I've loved to see the preservation of what they've done. Wilson has started actually adapting some of those code changes as well.
Really? Okay.
And so we've been able to see a lot of preservation of history out there. So I'd like to emulate some of that in order to keep Statesville as unique as it is, but also carry it forward. So,
Yeah.
But I'll get to the question. Sorry, super sidetracked there. I think the second thing, and arguably the most, transparency is most important because as we make these moves, we want people to understand what and why. But one of the first real decisions and changes we have to adjust is reallocating our resources for growth into industrial. We have to bring jobs here. I'm several conversations deep now with FedEx on their operations side because they would love to put a terminal here in Statesville near our airport that would bring, right now they're saying about 800. I think conservative estimates would put it closer to 600 right off the bat, new jobs into the area that start at $22.50 an hour and kind of climb from there. But we can't do any of that right now. We look around at what areas we have ready made for industrial companies to move in. As a city, we don't have those set up. I think we gave one of the last good ones over to Bobcat when they moved in, which was a great addition to our city, trying to bring in some better paying jobs. As a city, we have to focus on that. We've done so much for residential growth right now that is ruining our city's future. And I can't emphasize that enough, not to be a harbinger of doom, but if we keep bringing in this $500,000 housing, even $400,000, $350,000 housing, we are going to jack the property valuations through the roof. And the people who have lived in Statesville for generations will not be able to afford to stay.
I think they call that the locust effect. In other words,
absolutely.
they come in and they eat up everything.
They do. And so we've got this mentality, and I don't know where it comes from. And at the risk of being a bad politician and saying things that can be implied poorly towards, previous candidates, I'll say it anyway. We've got people who don't understand that if they keep bringing in housing, it is doing more harm than good for the community. And I know we need housing. We need roofs. But we can just add mixed use residential to downtown, right? We can adjust some of the coding on the south side to make people not have to put a sidewalk in for their one property sandwiched by 18 other properties without a sidewalk, right? We can adjust areas to bring in housing that will fit in our community without annexing neighborhoods, with a 8-minute response time from our, emergency services. So a lot of what we are doing is actually under the guise of benefit is going to destroy the city long term if we don't fix it and fix it quickly. And so the biggest and best way to fix that is bring in industrial growth. We have to raise the median wage. If we don't do that, no one will be able to afford here. No one that works here, at least. And so Statesville will just become a commuter town for Greensboro and Charlotte, and we'll lose everything that this city has been built on, right? So it's important that we kind of halt that as much as possible. Realistically, we should approve what we can service appropriately, what's in the area that needs to happen. But if we can prioritize industrial growth, we can flip our capitalistic society to the benefit of our city. Right now, we've got 2 or 3 jobs for every single person here, which drives wages down because employers don't have to compete for employees. They just set a price for what they want to pay, and then the employees have to compete for that job, and they lower their worth down to that market. If we can flip that around and bring the industry in, commerce will follow industry. It always does in every city. But then you have employers competing for employees, which drives wages up. That's how we get people to afford living It's how we increase our tax base long term. It's how we pay for all of our infrastructure adjustments that have to happen. Bringing in more residents just makes it inflames the infrastructure issues we currently have. And it doesn't set aside the money that we need in order to repair them. So industry has to be first. Commerce will follow industry. And once we have industry and commerce, our residential developers will come to us because the market will be here. And then we get to dictate to them how and what they need to build in order to approve their project. Right now, if we told a residential developer, we want these sidewalks, we want you to put this work in on the road for infrastructure adjustments, we want you to contribute this to the new waste treatment facilities we'll have to put in.
Got to have turn lanes.
Yeah, they'll just say no and go down to the next city because why would they do it here when they can do it down there? We don't have that demand in order to be able to put those restrictions on them. So I hear a lot also from other candidates of, well, we've got to require this. We can't require that if we don't have any leverage. They'll just leave and go somewhere else. So we have to create that demand. We have to do it intentionally. And that's why I think it's crucial that we bring in some people who have a business background and a mindset that understand how to make this city work for its people.
All right, folks, we're going to take a little bit of a break and do our public service announcements, and we'll come back. Next will be Corina going to talk to us about pedestrian infrastructure.
Kids across America are going to school hungry. Millions of kids every day. But one simple thing can help change all of this for a hungry child in America. Good, healthy food and the energy it brings. With help from caring people across America, No Kid Hungry is providing healthy meals and hope to hungry kids so they can build better futures. To learn more about ending child hunger in America, go to helpnokidhungry.org today.
We all want more for North Carolina. More boundless views, more adventures in the outdoors, and more clean roads to get there. But to get more, we have to do less. Less littering, that is. Make it your nature to trash your trash and keep NC clean. And we'll all have more reasons to love North Carolina. Litter less, get more. For more on the 7 outdoor NC Leave No Trace principles, visit OutdoorNC.com. Sponsored by the North Carolina Association of Broadcasters and Visit North Carolina, a part of the Economic Development Partnership of North Carolina in cooperation with this station.
We all play a role in keeping our community safe.
Every day, we move in and out of each other's busy lives.
It's easy to take for granted all the little moments that make up our everyday.
Some are good, others not so much.
But that's life.
It's when something doesn't seem quite right that it's time to pay attention.
Because only you know what's not supposed to be in your everyday.
So protect your everyday.
If you see something suspicious, say something to local authorities.
Bravo, Brenda. You've always been a saver. Price matching your price matches. The self-proclaimed queen of extreme couponing. But this time you've truly outdone yourself. By saving for this electric vehicle, you're locking in up to $1,000 a year in fuel and maintenance savings, which will leave you saying, cha-ching, every time you unplug. Good for your wallet, great for the planet. That's the power of EV. Sponsored by the NC Clean Energy Technology Center and the North Carolina Association of Broadcasters in cooperation with this station.
In the fight against Alzheimer's, now is the moment we've been waiting for. With new treatments emerging in the fight against Alzheimer's and all other dementia, now is the time for hope. Now is the time for action. So get out, get moving, and join the Alzheimer's Association Walk to End Alzheimer's on Saturday, September 27th at Liberty Park in Mooresville. Join the movement at alz.org/walk.
All right, folks, we're back here for the second half of the show. If anybody would like to call in and ask a question of these two candidates or me, whichever, 704-873-9929. So just give us a holler and let us know what's on your mind. We're going to go ahead and go on into this here. So I got Corina, and one of the things she would like to see is improving pedestrian infrastructure. All right, that's a pretty broad statement. What are we thinking? What are we thinking?
Yeah, this is kind of the thing that originally got me considering city council. Is I'm a dog walker. I have a Doberman. He has a lot of energy, and when you start your route, it's a bit of a frustration when I'm walking along the sidewalk and I cross the street and the road on the other side doesn't have a sidewalk there. It's on the other side of the road. And so you do this weird kind of zigzag to stay off the streets in order to get where you need to go. And I think this is particularly a problem in the South Side. And so this was something I wanted to address. Well, let's put in some more sidewalks. As I kind of been looking into the benefits, for me, I kind of realized that, you know, South Side in particular, and I found this out by reading Statesville's mobility and development plan from 2019. So this has been in place for a while, but the highest population where the household does not have access to a vehicle is in the South Side. And that was concerning to me for a couple reasons. First of all, there's not a whole lot of economic opportunity in that area, not a whole lot of businesses, not a whole lot of industrial. I think there's the schools, there's Kiwani.
Steelcraft Structures is over there, but yeah.
Right, exactly. Not a lot of big employers. And so people who are relying on walking to their jobs, you know, don't have a whole lot of jobs in that area. And then access to other areas was restricted by the fact that, you know, they're having to cross dangerous roads. There are no sidewalks for them to walk along. And I thought that was something that was problematic. I still consider it to be problematic. Another thing that I was realizing, I was reading a white paper actually, which was kind of this guidance on introducing non-motorized transportation or, you know, infrastructure. And they were saying this, from studies, that some of the areas where you introduce bike infrastructure, you had the highest economic return in terms of dollars, more so than roads, more so than walking, which I found to be very enlightening. You know, I want to see more dollars, you know, happen here in the area. I want to support local businesses, and I want people to have safe means of being able to get to their jobs so they can afford their houses. And so that was kind of an initial priority for me was, you know, let's start connecting the city together. Let's start considering how do we get people from the South Side, you know, to, you know, their jobs or to shopping on 21, you know, get people from Signal Hill area so that they can also access, you know, some of these, you know, economic areas of Statesville, building out the greenways. And kind of another aspect of that I also thought would be a net benefit is when we start encouraging things like tourism, having pedestrian infrastructure in place really benefits the tourism market, because then people can park their car, you know, in a location, and they can get out, walk around 3 or 4 hours, have lunch someplace, have dinner someplace. And so then their money is directly benefiting the local economy also. And, you know, I feel like that's a win-win situation. You know, anytime I'm just trying to, you know, consider the scenarios where, you know, what can we invest in that is going to bring a return. And so for me, you don't spend as much on sidewalks as you do in roads. And, you know, now with people having less access to vehicles because cars are expensive, houses are expensive, more people are walking, more people are riding their bikes. I don't know if you've seen, I've definitely noticed more people that are, you know, walking around. So support those people, give them a safe means of being able to get around, that is going to improve the economy for everyone.
Well, and if you look at South Statesville, I think the term they like to use is a food desert. There's no really any substantial grocery store over there.
No.
I think Dollar General now has started carrying a little bit of produce.
Right.
But anyway, and we tried and looked at this, and we're still working on it. We'll call it Team Iredell, the 3 reps and the senator. We've tried to get a pedestrian walkway over top there at Wilson Lee over what I call Industrial Boulevard, maybe Martin Luther King, but I always call Industrial Boulevard. We've tried to get one there, which will put them to be able to walk into. It's a little bit of a walk. It's probably another mile, but it can be done to that grocery store if that's what they choose to do. And so that's something, you know, that I would like to see, being on the chair of transportation, trying to pull off something there. But those things are expensive for what they are. And so it may just be better where we end up trying to do a lot better at pushing the crosswalk there with pedestrian light and whatnot, and you can stop the traffic. And instead of right now, it's a pretty busy thoroughfare through there. So
Oh, yeah. You always see people who are standing at those corners too, looking to cross. And I just kind of grit my teeth and pray they make it across safely.
well, I do. So, I mean, so those are things, where I think that we could take a look at certain things like that, and it would help a lot.
Yeah.
Lighting, I still want more lighting in South Statesville.
Right.
Hey.
Well, and green spaces, because during the summertime, it's very, very hot. And so, putting areas where you have trees that offer, shade for anyone who is walking along the hot pavement, I think that's also something that would be beneficial.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, I think that we already know what I'm so sorry. I keep doing this. You keep going to ask me a question when I jump in.
Third wish. No, I'm just saying. So what's your third one before we get into the fourth one here?
Yeah. So I think the third push that we have to do is our infrastructure as a whole, right? We have to push hard for setting up our infrastructure, and that starts with a long, hard look at our city's budget. I think we've got some items on there that we have to seriously consider what we are spending on them already, what needs to be spent. I don't love the fact that as a city, we don't have, a nest egg set aside for when something happens. We have nothing put towards the development of our new, waste treatment facility, which we know we're very close to capacity currently. With where we are. So we've got to really take that business minded approach, look through that budget and see what we can do, what we need to do, and then prioritize appropriately. I do also see from looking at that budget, what we saw this past year, that scares me is our growth. We had, 5.5% roughly growth in property taxes, and we saw our sales tax drop by like 10.2%. So not only are the people living here not spending money here, but the new people who moved in are also not spending money here. So I agree with what you're saying about making it accessible, to get people to all of our locations, kind of keep that money spent here in the city. I mean, I remember as a child, I say child, at 12 years old, going to work at doing groundskeeping at a funeral home in Virginia Beach. And my parents were, I will say, brave enough. Some people would say dumb. I will not say that. They were brave enough to let me bike 3 miles to and from work, each way. But I did that on sidewalks and, in a very busy area. And we have that entrepreneurial spirit in the city. We just don't have access, and we don't make it available to people. So as a result, we have situations where people kind of stay where they are. They stagnate in their economic situation, and they don't necessarily push.
Well, I hope both of y'all remember this for this last question. We're getting close on time, but people will get out and walk. People will get out and ride a bike if they feel safe.
Correct.
If they don't, they will want to be in their car.
Yeah.
Where they have that level of safety around them. Doors can lock,
Right.
So don't forget, there's a lot of people that after dark are afraid to get out. And that's sad. I can remember a time and when I was a kid, coming downtown, you did whatever you want. Nobody bothered it. Child was safe. I ain't saying let a 3-year-old out, but
right.
12, 15-year-old, we could go. And we were told if we got in mischief, we're going to get a rear end beat. So we won't be the problem. We wasn't the problem. But just remember, safety is number one. Safety brings the community together. Safety gets people out. Safety lets people walk to places they want to walk or bike or whatever. And it will cut down on it. That's critical. All right. So the last question here. And we're still going to let ladies go first because that way, Braden, you don't have to sweat too much.
Thank you. I can just steal her answer.
That's right. So here's my last question here is, with the proposed data center coming and bringing in what I figured was an extra $25 million a year in tax revenue. Did I figure it right?
Yeah.
If the tax rate stays where it's at, what would y'all do with that money?
So for me, what I would look at first would be increasing salaries for city employees. Kind of starting there as a point, because we talk about the need for increased wages for the area, and the city is an employer. And so you got to put your money where your mouth is. And so we have a lot of great public servants that, you know, are dedicated towards serving the community, and I think they need to be fairly compensated for that. Secondly, I would be looking at improving all of our infrastructure services, as you're talking about, you know, sewer, water line. You know, we don't want any more sinkholes happening. And so, you know, identifying all of those fixes that need to happen and get ahead of them. And then next, what I would be doing is, okay, how can we start laying down a foundation so that all the money that we're investing is making us more money. And then from there, you know, once we have that system in place, well, then we can start talking about fun stuff like tax cuts for the residents. So that's how I would be looking at that.
Right.
So I think first priority has to be climbing out of the hole that I think we've been put in a little bit. We have to invest a very large chunk of that into our industrial growth. I think that we have to, this is a depreciating asset, as you know, most property tax situations are. So we're looking at between 20, 25 million a year. But within the first 7.5, 8 years, that's going to start to kind of tank down a little bit. It'll still be, you know, a boon to the city, and we'll enjoy some of that revenue for ages. But what we have to do is figure out a way to keep that money replacing itself. And so I think that we dump a lot of that money into some more longer focused items, like growing that industrial sector for us, kind of climbing out of this residential push. And then once we make sure that we can secure long-term replacement of those funds, I do agree we dump into infrastructure. We do a lot of the moves that need to happen to kind of set ourselves up for success. I can't stress strongly enough how important it's going to be that we don't just throw this away, though. If we take this kind of what I would call in monopoly terms, you know, a get out of jail free card with some of the decision making that has led us to where we are now, and we keep making the same decision making, dumping it into housing projects and, you know, everything else that we've been throwing money at, I think that we are going to find ourselves in this same exact situation 4 to 8 years from now, where we're kind of on the cusp of 2 or 3 wrong moves away from not being able to climb back out of it. So I think this is important that we set ourselves up for the future. The city of Statesville can drive the county forward. We're at the perfect geographical location of 77 and 40. I think I argue, being in the transportation industry, that we are in a better geographical location than Charlotte is. There's no question about it in my mind.
It's amazing the size of the Statesville is with 2 major interstates.
Absolutely.
All these years.
It's just been
it's not easily done.
It's been mismanaged, I would say, somewhat horrifically. Again, not to be dramatic, but I will say that, you know, we've got this city. We don't want to lose our small town feel. And I think that because of that, we've held back and we've gripped tight. And what we're going to end up doing is we're going to kill off this small town that we love. And so you think of your kids and grandkids who have been here, they go to school or they go off to find a good paying job, and there aren't enough of those here. And so they leave. And we've got a mass exodus right now of generations that are younger, which are going to pull the older generation as well, because you're not going to have 100% of the generations that have lived here for, you know, decades and decades stay here. They're going to move as they get older to be with their family. And if we don't get out in front of this and make this a place that is sustainable for the younger generations, it is going to fall apart. And so I know that we just had a great decision made by our council. We approved the historic district for the Green Street area. That's awesome. And I love that we are recognizing our history. I, in this moment, am much more focused on what we can do to build history that will need to be recognized another 150 years from now. And so we have to focus on building a city that's going to be here for that long, rather than a small town that's going to get consumed and eaten up and just be a commuter town for these other cities, which will just be a massive waste of our geographical, you know, situation where we are. So we have to push industry. We have to use that money to push industrial growth, transportation, logistics. We have an airport that we've put a lot of money into. We have to capitalize on that. And right now, I just don't believe that we have the people in place who are going to do it. And so that's why I'm pushing. I'm affectionately referring to it as the ticket of tomorrow. But we've got some youth that is getting involved with, and it's not just youth getting involved because, oh, we're young, we're the new generation, we want to do this. We have accomplished youth, people who are small business owners and, civil engineers, people who, like myself, have brokered multiple $100 million deals, have run companies that bring in over, between 20 and 40 million a year, depending on the different companies that I've been with. We've got people like Corina who have incredibly accomplished pasts. We might not be the first of this or, tug at your heartstrings as far as a great backstory or history of who we are. But at the end of the day, as a city, we have to vote in the people who are most accomplished for it, the people who can actually make the right decisions to carry our city forward, or we'll take our heartstrings, kind of into the ground along with the city.
Well, I always caution whenever you see a project like this come along. We got a caller. All right. Anyway, what I was going to say was I noticed where everybody usually that wins the lottery within about 3 to 5 years are broker than they were before.
Yeah.
Beware. All right, we're gonna take a call here, and then I got to end it with crazy as it gets. Who we got here? This is Representative Jeff McNeely.
Hey, Jeff, William here again.
Hey, William.
Listening, you talk to your two guest candidates. I agree with a lot of what they're saying, both sides. The lay candidate speaking about pedestrian walkways, because there's a lot of unsafe areas in this town that need to be addressed. But I was going to ask you, I don't know if it's priority or not with the candidates. Is there anything being said or either the future for the landfill bordering Iredell, city limits and Iredell County itself, or do y'all have anything to do with that, or is that separate?
I'm pretty sure the landfill is not in the city limits, but it is right at it. The county hasn't requested to be annexed. But there's a lot of land there, all that Greenbrier, all that's in the city limits. And so I look for that to be developed. And that's what I want. Let's interfill. I don't know about y'all. Do y'all believe in interfill or sprawl? I think interfill is the way to go.
I prefer interfill.
A whole lot less sewer lines run all over God's creation.
Absolutely.
Right.
So.
Right. I was just curious. I mean, because the hill's getting bigger there.
Oh yeah.
Piling it up.
Well, the county owns the golf course, so eventually it'll be harder holes to play. You're gonna have to hit uphill to them for sure. So got to watch where your ball lands too.
Right. Well, you guys take care. Appreciate your good work, and thanks for taking my call.
Thank you, William.
Thank you.
All right. So anyway, yeah, but I do say beware. Like I said, this is a lot of people are not happy, but it is a heck of a boon as far as income that you haven't had. And Braden, I'm going to agree with you. I've told the city council, they've not really liked my opinion on some things. And one of them I told them was, y'all are broke, just nobody's told you that yet.
Completely.
And you look, they don't have the reserves, and you've got to have some kind of reserve. When you get to your sewer capacity, I think it's at 75%, you've got to have a plan submitted to Diener, or I always call him Diener, but DEQ.
Yeah.
And then when you're at, I think it's 85, 90.
It's 80%.
You got to start building.
Yeah.
All right. Well, and it used, I've had them. We were very blessed, and me and Vicky Sawyer, it was Gray Mills in. We got Todd Carver now, Mitchell Setzer. We got like $23 million for water sewer for the city of Statesville. But that was back when we had monopoly money coming from the feds on COVID. And, I was just grabbing anything I could get. That's got to dry it up.
Yep.
So as the old saying, yo, you own your own now, and you've got to figure your way here. So, and I don't think there's been a lot. I've heard people holler and scream to stop and slow down. I've had others run over them in a fast moving truck while they're hollering it too. So it's going to be a good opportunity, but it's also, it can go wrong as much as it can go right.
Yeah. To summarize the state of the city currently, we have a higher tax rate than Charlotte.
Yeah.
For our people here in Statesville, and we see nothing from it.
Yep.
Nothing. So we've when I say horrifically mismanaged it, I mean that. The problem is, as a city, when you run out of income, the only place to take that from is its people. And so our citizens who have to go out there and vote this November 4th, and again, I encourage everyone to get out there and vote. And if you're in the county, go talk to everyone you know in the city and get them out, because this affects the county too.
Oh, yeah.
But if we don't get out there and vote, it will quite literally be your money that comes up and pays, because our city council as it exists currently will blow through that $25 million a year in some of the dumbest things you've ever seen.
Well, that's what I'm worried about. Corina, Braden, appreciate y'all coming on. I'm going to end it with one of my, what I do like to do now. It's called Crazy as It Gets. This is something you don't want to do. So Durham City Council passed a resolution to proclaim the Fourth Amendment Workplace Safety Resolution. ICE is not allowed or welcome on any of the city of Durham's property. Now, this is a federal agency being told by a city council, you're not to come on any of our property. Now, the problem with this is, so in case y'all understand how this works, y'all don't have that power.
I was gonna say,
Durham didn't either, but it sounded good and it made them feel great. But this might be as crazy as it gets when they think they're going to keep ICE out. And one of the reasons they did it is there's a guy who has got an arrest sheet a mile long. They know he's trouble from El Salvador, gets in a domestic violence suit, and they go to the courthouse in Durham and he has his trial, and then they arrest him to deport. And that's when they lost their mind. Why would they want to keep him? Because that costs money, number one. And number two, why do you want him out in your community if he's just done domestic violence, plus he's done everything else you can think of, and he's not supposed to be here? Why?
It's one of two things. I like to say it's either ignorance or it's incompetence. And I don't know which of the two is worse in these situations.
I think they doubled up.
But typically it's all about what I consider the most hateful practice in politics, but it's pandering for votes.
Yeah.
They want to go out there and tell everybody, oh, we're going to do this thing that we can't actually do, right? Like, I'm not going to tell people, well, I'm going to stand up to the federal government. Do you know why? Because I can't. And I'm not going to lie to the people who have, potentially elected me into office. I believe in truthfulness and transparency, right? But they're going to put this out there regardless of their views for or against how ICE is currently acting. It doesn't matter. If you're going to pass something that's meaningless just to try and pander to constituents for future votes, I think that is one of the more despicable things, and part of the reason why our communities are in the state that they're in, because people don't care about reality. They're just trying to pay off and buy votes through pandering in these manners and methods.
Yep. For all y'all that don't know, the Fourth Amendment protects citizens, not illegal immigrants, citizens against unreasonable search and seizure. Seizure does not mean you're getting arrested. That means your property's taken.
That's correct.
You're getting incarcerated, not seized, whenever they come and get you. So where they get the Fourth Amendment protects this guy from not being incarcerated, I don't know. Folks, get out and vote. Vote often, vote early. But get out and vote. It's important. All right, we're going to go ahead and shut it down today. We're going to say our prayer like we always do. Dear Lord, I pray my blessing upon all these candidates that are running for office and all the elected officials. Lord, we need wisdom, and it comes from you. We need guidance. That comes from you. We need you just to be with us. Lead us in the direction we should go. You make it plain. Do not let us ignorantly ignore it. Just let us follow you. I pray you watch over us and be with us all. In Jesus Christ's name, amen. Folks, until next week, take care.
Thank you for tuning in to Taking Care of NC. We hope today's program offered valuable insights into the topics shaping North Carolina's future. Stay informed, stay engaged, and join us next time as we continue exploring the issues that matter most to our state. Until then, take care, and thank you for being a part of the conversation.
Real Country is 550 AM WAME, 92.9 W225BD, Statesville.
WAME and Bunce Johnson Funeral Home are proud to